The books that the world calls immoral are books that show the world its own shame. Oscar Wilde. So it started with an Instagram quote. I saw that on my Explore page, scrolled down to the hashtags, and was introduced to the phrase dark academia, something that I think I might have heard before, but really had no idea what it was about. According to the algorithm, dark academia is quotes by Oscar Wilde, E.M. Forster, skinny white girls in tweed with high-waisted pants, and like grim, dark photos of New England universities. All that being said, I was kind of intrigued by this aesthetic, and upon some Googling, found a definition that actually really resonated with me. Dark academia is an aesthetic that revolves around classic literature, the pursuit of self-discovery, and a general passion for knowledge and learning. Now, back in my day, this was just like an angsty nerd who had more books than friends and, thought too much. But despite the overwhelmingly Eurocentric focus, which is unnecessary, I have actually found a lot of the things that I listen to and read and watch apparently fall into this subcategory of dark academia. Although I should probably point out that I've learned that there are folks who care more about the aesthetic. So, like I said, the tweed, the corduroy, the elbow patches, the accessories. There are those who care more about the pursuit of study, literature, religion, art, and film. And then there's people in the middle who have interests that kind of flow in and out. All that being said, I decided to try the dark academia book tag. So I have my handy dandy notebook because, it's aesthetically pleasing, and also I film on my phone. And here are the prompts. So first, what is your favorite dark academia book and movie? For book, I'm going to have to go with Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I'm choosing this because it has all of the themes that I love in a book. It has Gothic history, like a strong female character who is creative and empathetic, who is independent, especially given her time period. It has ghost elements, some spooky elements. It has this romance that has been adapted so many different times. It is one of the few books that I was assigned in school that's considered a classic that I genuinely enjoyed. Now, with many of these classics, there were like pages and pages and pages of description of farmland, and maybe I'm missing like the metaphor for how the barren wasteland is like a reflection of Rochester's heart, but the actual dynamics between the characters and her development individually is what really compels me about this story. And for movie, I'm gonna go with History Boys. Now, Dead Poet Society apparently is like the pinnacle of dark academia, a film, but I'm going with History Boys because it taught me the idea of subjective or subjunctive history, depending on who says it. This idea that if Winston Churchill had shittier teeth and had to gone to the dentist that this other man went to the dentist for on the same day Parliament was voting for this, we may have lost the war. Like, it's all these really creative ways of looking at history that are beyond just A plus B equals C. And the story itself centers around a group of English schoolboys who are all trying to get into Oxford, Cambridge, these high-class universities, and their favorite professor is one who has his own demons that they have to deal with, but really loves literature and film and learning for learning's sake. The quote that I included in my BookTube newbie tag is from History Boys. And then their boys are also introduced to this younger teacher who is telling them to do things that contradict with what they believe to be right, contradict with the way they've learned to look at history, but may help them get into these elite universities they want to get into. So it's a story that I find really compelling. It actually was adapted from a play, and I think that it fits the themes of sacrifice. It fits the themes of yearning and literature and friendship and school. It's a really, really funny piece of work, and I would highly recommend it. The next prompt is, if you could take any dead poet on a date, who would it be? My first choice would have to be Maya Angelou. As a woman, as a mother, as a poet, as an author, as a performer, I would love to just sit at her feet and either hear the stories I've already heard just from the source itself, or get to ask her questions that she hasn't answered in her volumes and volumes of text. I actually reread her autobiography earlier this year, or one part of her autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and it just ignited this desire for me to go even deeper into her canon. The other poet I would choose is Sylvia Plath. Now, her semi-autobiographical book, The Bell Jar, is one of my favorite books I've ever read, but I don't read it often because it brings me back to a time in my life in which I heavily identified with the main character, and Thankfully, unlike Sylvia Plath, was able to overcome some of my demons. However, I would choose her because her writings speak of such pain and yearning and dreaming and longing that I would love to be able to explore in a two-way conversation. And I will never forget the paragraph in the Bell Jar where she talks about the fig tree and uses a tree filled with figs, each fig a different future, a different dream, as an example of her decision paralysis. She knows that she can't be traveling the world with exotic lovers and staying at home with a loving husband and children. She knows she can't be a world-class poet and writer and be an amazing professor and be a fashionable editor of a magazine. And she also knows that choosing one dream would mean giving up all the rest. And her inability to choose means eventually she feels like she's going to lose all of them. And as someone who has experienced that, sometimes still does experience that, I have to believe that that section of the Bell Jar is one of the autobiographical parts, because I don't know how someone who hasn't gone through that personally could write it so viscerally. So Maya Angelou and Sylvia Plath would be the two poets I would choose. Next, we have, what is your favorite painting or sculpture? As much as I marvel at the people who are able to make stone look like fabric, I don't really have a favorite sculpture, so I'm going to go with painting. And since my favorite painter is Frida Kahlo, among others, but specifically Frida, I'm going to go with The Broken Column. This painting to me evokes such sensuality and pain and religious iconography and power. I could stare at it forever. I've unfortunately never been able to see it in person, but I would absolutely love to. And Frida Kahlo as a whole, as I said, I've mentioned her on this channel on multiple occasions. Almost all of her works I could stare at for extended periods of time, but specifically this one. Continuing on the art theme, we have, what is your favorite architectural marvel? Hands down, this is Basilica de la Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, Spain. This is a cathedral that's been under construction for hundreds of years, originally designed by Antoni Gaudi. And I was fortunate enough to see it when I got to visit Barcelona with my best friend a few years ago. And it is one of my most favorite things that I have ever done. It is an absolutely stunning, stunning building. And it's supposed to be finished in 2026. I don't know about how the pandemic's affected the construction schedule, but the point is, God willing, I will be alive by the time this building is finished, and I cannot wait to go back to Spain to see it again. Next, we have, what Shakespeare role would you like to play? Lady Macbeth has been a popular choice, understandably, but I'm going to have to go with Cleopatra from Antony and Cleopatra. She is one of the most misunderstood historical figures, in my opinion, and every bit of research I do into her shows me how intelligent and unique and strategic she was, not just for an Egyptian leader, but specifically a Ptolemaic leader, and how so much of what we know about her in terms of her beauty or her sexuality or her selfishness is not actually historically sound. A lot of it has to do with Roman propaganda, which is understandable considering how well she played their game against them, despite her tragic end. So although I don't have that really facility of language to do a Shakespeare play, I would want to be Cleopatra. Speaking of languages, the next prompt is, what languages do you speak and which ones would you like to learn? I obviously speak English. I'm in the process of learning Spanish, and I would really like to be fluent in English, Spanish, and Italian. I have witnessed one of my titis speaking in full Spanish to an Italian person and them speaking in full Italian back, and they still understood each other enough to figure out, what they were trying to figure out. And so I'd like to think that once I master one, it'll be easier to master another, as opposed to me jumping to like Mandarin or French. But those are the three that I would like to know very, very well. The next prompt is, what is your favorite quote? Both of these quotes, again, I'm not following the rules, are by Toni Morrison because they hit me in different ways. The first is, if there's a book you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, you must be the one to write it. And I hate this quote because I take it as a personal attack, and it punches me in the gut every time I hear it. It is the reason I started writing again as an adult and really taking it seriously. And especially with her passing in the last few years, I feel this mandate even more strongly. The other Toni Morrison quote I love is from one of her works, Song of Solomon. And it's actually the last line in the book. If you surrender to the air, you can ride it. I don't want to delve too much into this because I'd have to give spoilers on what happens to one of the main characters, but I'm including it because it is something that I heard before I read the book, and even after reading it, I still struggle with how I could apply it to my life, even though I feel like I have the academic Sparks Notes understanding of it. So I'm including that quote because it's something I'm still wrestling with, so maybe it'll give you something to chew on as well. The next prompt is, if you could choose a fictional death, what would it be? And I was like, I'm past my days of suicidal ideation, but then I remembered the movie Wanted. Very, very brief summary. Wanted is a movie about a legion of assassins who use a magical loom to communicate with fate. The loom gives names and binary code. They interpret those names and then they kill those people. And they are supposed to be guardians of fate and shaping human history in this way. Spoiler alert, it is revealed that one of the head assassins has been manipulating everyone else into killing people based on who he wants to kill rather than who fate has called to die. And one of the main characters is played by Angelina Jolie, and her name is Fox. And she, of all the assassins, is the one most committed to their mission because her own father was murdered by someone who the fate had decided was supposed to die, but an agent decided not to. So she has a personal experience with the ways that not doing what the loom says can drastically affect people's lives. And there's a moment in this movie where she is just going around killing everyone because she finds out that all of their names have come up on the loom. When she finds out that her name has come up on the loom, she kills herself. And that sounds very tragic, and it is a pretty intense scene, but the reason I would choose it as my fictional death is because I'd like to believe that if I claim to stand by something, if I claim to fight for something, if for so many years I've dedicated my life to a particular service or mission, if it doesn't serve me best in that moment to continue following that path, I would like to think that I would stay true to the course. So I would choose Fox's death in Wanted. The next prompt is which which university or college would you like to attend? And I'm going to say mine. I would love to attend my college. It is completely for safety and health reasons that I am taking classes online, and I do believe that is objectively the right choice, especially the way the national administration, but specifically my local administration, has been handling the pandemic. Please go vote. All the information you need will be in the description of my video, as it has been in the description of several videos for several weeks. But I would like to actually go to my campus. That would be nice. Next, we have what murder weapon or method would you use? I've watched too much Criminal Minds, so I know this is a very gendered choice, but I choose poison. I'm not very physically strong. I don't got a lot of rage in my body. However, if I actually wanted to kill somebody, like hypothetically, moving right along before this gets flagged, what is your preferred mythology? I don't have an answer for this one because unfortunately, the mythology I am most familiar with is Greek and Roman because of my westernized American education. And I would never want to be a part of that. I understand folks who are like super into like Percy Jackson or other adaptations or retellings, why it's cool. But all I can think about is my likelihood of being assaulted by Zeus or cursed by Hera. And I want no part of it. The next prompt is also very aggressive. What would you want your PhD to be in? We will come back to this once I get my master's, hopefully. This is such a real question to me, I can't even think about it for fun. And the final prompt is, what is a fictional character you die for? Now, based on what I've seen, some people are answering this like, oh, I love this person so much I would die for them. But in a combat sense, I would choose Captain Niobe of The Matrix. This role was written specifically by the Wachowski siblings for Jada Pinkett Smith. And according to Matrix mythology, she not only is one of the most talented fighters in the Matrix, but able to fight and escape, frankly, an agent of Machine City, being able to hold her own against the Merovingian assassins, and going toe-to-toe with Seraph. In the real world, in the human world, she is hands down the most talented pilot. She does things that nobody has ever done with those ships. And you see that in not the first Matrix, but in the subsequent Matrix movies. She is a captain. She is amazing. She stands by her beliefs. She challenges her own romantic partner when they conflict on what they believe the best course of action is. And she sacrifices her own ship as a captain, your pride and joy, because she believes so strongly in Neo's mission and the hope for the human civilization. That made no sense if you have not seen any of the Matrix movies, but it's a trilogy and they're so long I couldn't possibly give a fair summary. So just know that I would hands down die for Captain Niobe. Now, finally, we have a couple rapid fire questions, and I will do my best to actually not be long-winded, even though, girl, have I ever made a video that's been less than 10 minutes. First, leather or cloth bound books? Leather. Dog ear or highlight? neither, but if I had to pick, dog ear. Sculptures or paintings? Paintings for sure, specifically oil paintings. Piano or violin? Piano. I used to play piano when I was a kid and I wish I kept it up. Although I will say, if this question was piano or cello, cello hands down. I could not explain why, but it is my absolute favorite instrument to listen to. Film or theater? I can't. I have experienced things in theater as someone who goes to see it and as someone who works in it that I have never emotionally experienced anywhere else. But unfortunately, it's so hard to defend theater sometimes when it's so inaccessible, not just in price range, but also in the fact that as a live art, it's here and then it's gone. I've seen so many more films and I have watched theater productions. I'm going to go with both. And I'll just like give up a body part or something. I can't possibly pick between the two. Next, we have poetry or prose. Prose, I can't defend it. It's just my preference. Museums or bookshops. Ooh, I want to own a bookshop one day, but I have spent so much time in museums in my life. And for many, many years, I wanted to be a museum curator. Something that's making me hesitate on museums is because there is so much unethical behavior going on when it comes to museums that are keeping or intentionally procuring artifacts and items that were stolen from other countries during times of occupation or genocide or colonization, and nobody wants to give them back because, they're like, well, how can we have a museum if, we gave back Africa everything we stole from her? It's a whole thing, but I'm going to have to go with museums just because I would like to believe there's a way to move forward in an ethical way. And a lot of museums have bookshops, so I'm kind of cheating by combining the two. Don't hate me. The smell of books, or the smell of tea or coffee. Not a coffee drinker. I do love some tea, but the smell of books all the way. Fountain pen or typewriter? I don't know how to write with a fountain pen, even though I think it's beautiful, so typewriter. And finally, new or used books. I'm going to have to go with used. If someone is an aggressive note taker or highlighter, it is kind of hard for me to focus on the story. But in most cases, I love the vintage covers. I love seeing something that's well worn and well loved. And in the case of one of my poetry books, I love seeing signatures and dates of people who owned it before me. I feel like I'm part of this long literary lineage. So with all that being said, that is a brief history, I guess, of dark academia and the dark academia book tag. Thank you again to Carolyn Marie Reeds and Emmy, whose information I'll put in the description, for they are the ones that created this tag. And I hope that this kind of fit into your fall, spooky, back to school mood. Bye.